So on Wednesday, when Kyle Shanahan met with the media, he fielded a question about Sebastian Valdez, the 49ers undrafted defensive tackle. And his answer was talking about why, Valdez on the practice squad instead of the 53 man, what happened there. And what Shanahan said was a little bit telling. And it's actually the truth. He said that in his mind, there's no difference between the 53 man roster and the 16 guys on the practice squad. And then he certainly made note of there is a big difference for the players because the minimum salary for a 53 man roster is considerably more than the salary for the practice squad. But why this makes it a truism is that any player on the 53 man roster can be inactive for a game, and any player on the practice squad can be active for a game. So the reason I bring that up is in relation to a player the 49ers signed or at least agreed to terms with on Wednesday. It is widely reported that Marquez Valdes-Scantling had signed with the 49ers. But what I just found out was that the wide receiver, the veteran wide receiver, did not sign to the 53 man roster. He is actually on the practice squad. So that seems to make a lot more sense of why the 49ers would bring in Valdes-Scantling, who was released by the Seattle Seahawks on Tuesday. They bring him to the practice squad. And so as one of the 16 members of the practice squad, absolutely, he can be activated at any point. He can be elevated at any point to play in a game. But that probably is going to take a little bit of time for him to get to that point. Now, Valdes-Scantling, you probably remember him maybe primarily with the Green Bay Packers, but also a couple of years with the Kansas City Chiefs. And he did catch a touchdown pass in the Super Bowl against the 49ers last year with Buffalo and New Orleans. Wasn't super productive. 19 catches, 411 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And then he could not make the Seattle Seahawks team. So the first thing I thought of when they signed him, or at least the reports of them signing him, was that it seemed to me like it wasn't necessarily an upgrade over Robbie Chosen or Isaiah Hodgins, and certainly not Russell Gage. Now, Russell Gage was re-signed by the 49ers after he was released. Chosen, by the way, is on the practice squad as well, along with Malik Turner. But Russell Gage was signed to the 53-man. So Marquez Valdes-Scantling on the practice squad with the 49ers. And so I think the 49ers could still be in the market for a wide receiver. I know I reported earlier on Wednesday that there was high interest in Kendrick Bourne. And, you still look at the 49ers wide receiver position, and there are question marks, obviously, quite obviously. Ricky Pearsall, clearly the 49ers number one wide receiver as they open the season. And then Jauan Jennings, really no clarity on his situation, no clarity provided by John Lynch or Kyle Shanahan about where he is and his likelihood or probability toward playing week 1, September 7th against the Seattle Seahawks. So, other than Ricky Pearsall, right now, the only wide receiver who's healthy and ready to go on the team is Sky Moore, and he's only been around for a week. And he wasn't super productive with the Kansas City Chiefs as coming in as a second-round pick. Last year, he had the core muscle injury, so he didn't play a whole lot either. But Russell Gage, he had been out a little time with a knee injury. He's back now. We'll see how healthy he is as the 49ers have, a week and a half before they get ready for the start of the regular season. But, the other receivers on the team, Jordan Watkins is a player who has a lot of promise as a rookie, but he's coming off a high ankle sprain. And so as that rookie, he needed those practice reps in a big way. And you saw that in the one preseason game that he played. He showed the promise, going up top, catching a 50-yard pass against the Denver Broncos number one defense, but then also committing some mistakes, a false start, running a wrong route, contributing to a interception by Mac Jones. So the 49ers have some things to figure out there at that wide receiver position. And that's why, I'm not saying it's going to happen. But it does still make sense for the 49ers, even though they got Russell Gage on the 53, even though they have Robbie Chosen and Marquez Valdes-Scantling on the practice squad. It still does make sense in some way for Kendrick Bourne to come to the team, just because he's been around the 49ers his first 4 years with the 49ers. He knows the terminology. It won't take him long to get up to speed. And so that's where the 49ers are right now with the situation at wide receiver. Again, a lot of uncertainty as they head into another practice on Thursday. And then I think they'll have some time off before they get going with the game planning to be ready for the Seattle Seahawks. So 49ers do have some options now with some veteran guys at the wide receiver position, but it's very clear that Ricky Pearsall is the number one guy. We'll see what happens with the rest of that depth chart. But going back to what Kyle Shanahan had to say about the combination of the 53-man roster and the 16-player practice squad, that'll certainly be one of the major developments through the course of the next 10 days. Is just who on the 49ers building, I should say, who in the 49ers building at the wide receiver position can put himself in a spot to make a contribution as a wide receiver week one of the regular season. So they got to get some guys healthy. Jacob Cowan goes on injured reserve, and he's going to be out there and missing a lot of time. And we know that Sky Moore will be active, because I don't think the 49ers have another return option unless they bump up Junior Bergen from the practice squad. But a lot of uncertainty as the 49ers kind of figure out where they want to go with this wide receiver spot. But the takeaway again is that Marquez Valdes-Scantling not on the 53-man roster, and leaving the 49ers some flexibility as far as how they want to work that position with the regular season, with the start of the regular season right around the corner. And I did see a lot of your comments in the last video I posted about Jauan Jennings and kind of the murky nature of where he is, the fact that, according to John Lynch, he requested a trade. The 49ers aren't going to do anything with that trade request. They don't plan on trading him. A lot of people saying just put him on IR. Well, the issue there, well, there's a lot of issues, but I would say, the 49ers are a better team with Jauan Jennings. Is he a true number one wide receiver? Probably not, or no. Did he look like a number one receiver last year for the 49ers? Yes, he did. Now, a lot of that had to do with no Brandon Ayuk. Really, Ricky Pearsall didn't have a chance from the beginning to make any kind of impact, and he was far behind when he finally did get on the field. And then Deebo Samuel, very much up and down. But Jauan Jennings, with what he brings to the table, the third down target, the blocking, 49ers are a better team with him. And so, what is the compromise? What can they do to get Jauan Jennings in there? If this, the 49ers sound like they're convinced that he does have a calf injury. And if that's the case, and it appears to be chronic, then you can understand the 49ers' reluctance to pay him top dollar, give him an extension, and devote money to him when this has been an issue in the past. And who's to say it won't be an issue in the future? One of the things for Jauan Jennings is that if they were to put him on IR, he would still get paid his scheduled salary. So you're, in essence, wasting money for a guy who's not out there on the field. They would be saving money because he does have roster bonuses, per game roster bonuses that total $850,000 for the year. So basically, every time Jauan Jennings suits up for a game, he makes $50,000. I did ask John Lynch about the reported incentives. I think it's on one of the websites that keeps track of NFL salaries and contracts. That he does not have any performance-based incentives for this coming season. So I know there's a report on that site that he could make up to $3.5 million, I believe, if he hits like 60 catches and 600 yards and 6 touchdowns or whatever those numbers were. But that's not the case. As John Lynch said, on Wednesday. No performance-based issues. It just behooves the 49ers to get one of their good players out there on the field if he's capable of being out there on the field. And just to kind of reiterate what John Lynch said, they're not trading him. He also said that two things can be equally true. He can be injured with a calf that's bothering him, and he can also want a new contract. And so right now, there's no sign, there's no indication that that calf is getting better to the point where he can suit up on Sunday, September 7th. And there's also no indication that a new contract, the kind of contract that would satisfy him for this season and maybe beyond, there's no indication that that contract is in the works, or the sides are getting close, or the sides are even having productive talks. So up to this point, it's, there hasn't been a whole lot of discussion about it. There's just Jauan Jennings hasn't been out there on the practice field like Brandon Ayuk has been out there this year. So all of his rehab stuff is taking place behind the scenes. I haven't seen him on the practice field working out with the strength and conditioning staff or anything like that. So, what John Lynch said, I would kind of agree with, and it's something that I have said, is that yes, he does have something with that calf. Yes, he does want a new contract. And is the reason he's not out there, is it partly the calf, but also partly the contract? Or is it more the contract than the calf, or more the calf than the contract? It's anybody's guess. I don't know. Jauan Jennings hasn't spoken to the media. He really hasn't done hasn't really put anything out there about where he stands since the opening of training camp, or even before that. So we're in kind of wait and see mode with the 49ers and their wide receivers. So once again, thanks for watching this video, and that is it for now.